Speaking of moments, you've been, as you mentioned, your career with the Fever. First six, though, were tough, obviously. They weren't as easy. You guys have made the playoffs the last two. What's been the big turnaround? How have you viewed the way the team has grown organically?
Oh, man.
Kelsey Mitchell just blew up the WNBA's entire game plan with one interview. The league spent months trying to get veterans to trash Caitlin Clark, or at least stay quiet about her impact. Instead, Mitchell went on camera and basically told everyone that Clark changed the world of basketball forever. This wasn't some casual comment either. Mitchell looked straight into that camera and said Clark transformed the entire dynamic of the sport. Not just helped the team, not just brought some fans. She said Clark changed everything about basketball itself.
Get to know these players for who they were. And then you bring in Caitlin, who changed the world, changed the dynamic of basketball. And as a friend and as a player, you grow to appreciate her because, certain doors have opened because she's come to the Fever, and you have to respect that. And I love the teammate and person in her because she's accepted it with so much grace and even welcomed us with open arms to, make this thing happen. So I think it just took a lot of big pieces to make, what it is now.
But here's where it gets absolutely wild. The WNBA brass thought they had Mitchell in their pocket. She was supposed to be the perfect spokesperson for their narrative. The veteran who paid her dues and deserved recognition before some rookie showed up and stole the spotlight. Mitchell had every reason to be bitter about Clark. She spent 8 years getting her teeth kicked in with the worst team in the league. She watched opponents use Indiana games as rest days for their stars. She answered questions about building something while her team barely won 5 games in an entire season. The league figured Mitchell would follow the script, maybe throw in some passive-aggressive comments about earning respect or paying dues. Instead, she did the complete opposite and praised Clark so hard it probably gave Commissioner Kathy Engelbert nightmares.
You've changed the world in so many ways. You've done it with so much grace. And I'm so happy to take the floor with you, to be a part of this experience. I want to tell you to give yourself some grace, kid. You've done a lot of things that not a lot of people can do. And from me to you, I'm always going to be a fan. I'm always going to be in your corner. I'm always going to be in your backcourt.
Not only that, Mitchell called Clark her friend, not teammate, not just someone she plays with. Friend. That one word destroyed months of the WNBA's careful planning to create drama and division around Clark's success. The interview spread faster than gossip in a high school hallway. Suddenly, everyone was talking about how genuine Mitchell sounded, how refreshing it was to hear a veteran actually support a young star instead of throwing shade. Let's pause for a second and think about this. Mitchell had the perfect opportunity to get her flowers while subtly diminishing Clark's impact. She could have said something about team chemistry or how everyone contributed. Instead, she went full nuclear and said Clark changed the world. The WNBA establishment is probably still trying to figure out how their plan backfired so spectacularally.
But you've been with Indiana through the thick and thin. You've been with them since, like we was talking, like we about to go get our rhythm on Indiana. You've been there, you stuck through until now being in semifinals. What does that feel like? And for people watching, like girls, boys, if they athletes, not athletes, what does it feel like to stick through something and now see it come into full fold?
They wanted Mitchell to be the voice of veteran wisdom, keeping Clark in her place. Instead, she became Clark's biggest advocate and made everyone else look petty by comparison. Here's the backstory that makes Mitchell's comments so devastating. For 8 straight years, Mitchell was basically playing basketball in witness protection. The Indiana Fever were so bad that opposing teams treated games against them like charity work. Mitchell carried a roster that won exactly 5 games in one season, 5 games out of 34. That's not basketball, that's assisted living for professional athletes. She had to sit through press conferences and pretend there were positives to discuss after getting blown out by 24 points again. The coaching carousel never stopped spinning either. 5 different coaches in 8 years. Mitchell watched more coaches get fired than some players see in their entire careers. Each new coach promised a fresh start and a new system. Each one lasted about as long as a celebrity marriage. But wait, it gets even more brutal. Other teams literally used Indiana games to rest their superstars.
You guys have made the playoffs the last 2. What's been the big turnaround? How have you viewed the way the team has grown organically?
Oh, man, I think a big shout out to the organization taking time to rebuild. I think our draft picks ended up coming big. Lexi Hall was a big draft pick, and then you get Kaylin, and then you get AB. And so you culminate that together with, my experience and having to, go through a couple of things before they got there. I think it was just like a match made in heaven, really, because I was, still at a young age to really, vibe and get to know these players for who they were. And then you bring in Kaylin, who changed the world, changed the dynamic of basketball. And as a friend and as a player, you grow to appreciate her because, certain doors have opened because she's come to the Fever, and you have to respect that.
Why risk injury against a team that couldn't win if you spotted them a 20-point lead? Mitchell had to show up every night, knowing the opponent's best players might not even suit up because beating Indiana was considered that automatic. The media barely covered Indiana games unless it was to talk about how historically bad they were. Mitchell would drop 25 points in a loss, and nobody cared because the story was always about how the Fever set another record for futility. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Mitchell was dealing with something even worse: the constant questions about her future. Every season brought rumors about her requesting a trade or the team shopping her to contenders. She could have easily demanded out and joined a winner somewhere else. Instead, Mitchell stuck around and became the human embodiment of loyalty. She kept grinding through blowouts and empty arenas, while other players built championship resumes on better teams.
Now, you were an MVP finalist this year with our own Chiney Ogwumike even saying that you had the best season of any guard this year in the league. What has it been like to get that kind of recognition and get your flowers?
Oh, I appreciate it. I've been to a lot throughout the course of my career with Indiana Fever. It's been like my longest, ever. So it's for me, it's a humbling experience to kind of see myself make waves from where it started to where it is now. And just kind of respect the game, lean on the game as far as creating bonds and friendships. And now you get to see us do that now, a couple years later.
She was basically volunteering to be the captain of the Titanic while it sank in slow motion. Now here comes the plot twist. All those years of suffering positioned Mitchell perfectly to recognize real change when it finally arrived. She lived through Indiana's rock bottom, so when Clark showed up and everything transformed overnight, Mitchell knew exactly how massive that shift really was. The sellout crowds, the primetime games, the national media attention. Mitchell had experienced the complete opposite for nearly a decade. She understood better than anyone what Clark's presence meant for not just the Fever, but for women's basketball as a whole. The real tea starts spilling when you understand what the WNBA was cooking behind closed doors. The league had a serious problem on their hands when Clark got drafted. Suddenly, this rookie was selling more jerseys than veterans who'd been grinding for years. Attendance doubled wherever she played. TV ratings went through the roof. But instead of celebrating, the WNBA old guard panicked. They watched Clark transform their entire sport in months and decided that was somehow a threat to everyone else. So they started working the phones, pressuring veteran players to keep Clark humble. Asia Wilson got the memo loud and clear. She started throwing subtle shade about Clark needing to earn respect and prove herself at the professional level. Cheryl Swoops went even harder, questioning Clark's college stats and basically trying to rewrite history about her achievements. Get this though, the pressure campaign wasn't just about individual jealousy. The WNBA brass was genuinely worried that Clark's instant success would make other players look bad by comparison. They wanted to control the narrative and make sure Clark stayed in her lane as a promising rookie instead of the game-changing superstar she obviously was. Commissioner Engelbert and her crew figured they could use veteran voices to pump the brakes on Clark hype. They thought players like Mitchell would be perfect soldiers for this mission since she'd paid her dues in the trenches for so long. The strategy seemed foolproof on paper. Get respected veterans to talk about earning stripes and respecting the process. Make Clark's success seem less revolutionary and more like normal rookie development. Keep the focus on team accomplishments instead of individual brilliance. But they completely misread Mitchell's personality. They assumed she'd be bitter about a rookie stealing her thunder after years of carrying a terrible team. They thought she'd jump at the chance to remind everyone about veteran leadership and paying dues. Instead of following orders, Mitchell went completely rogue. She not only refused to diminish Clark's impact, but actually amplified it beyond what even Clark's biggest fans were saying. Mitchell basically told the whole league that Clark didn't just change basketball, she changed the world. The WNBA establishment watched their carefully planned narrative control strategy explode in real time. Instead of containing Clark's influence, Mitchell's endorsement made it seem even bigger and more legitimate than before. What makes this even more embarrassing for the league is that Mitchell had the perfect platform to execute their plan. She was doing a major interview during playoff time when everyone was paying attention. She had the credibility and the opportunity to shape the conversation exactly how the WNBA wanted, but Mitchell chose authenticity over politics. She chose truth over talking points. And in doing so, she exposed just how petty and calculated the league's anti-Clark campaign really was. This is where Mitchell's interview turned into a masterclass in destroying league propaganda. She didn't just praise Clark's basketball skills or talk about team chemistry. She went nuclear and called Clark her friend. That single word choice sent shockwaves through WNBA headquarters because it proved their divide and conquer strategy was dead on arrival. Mitchell explained how Clark welcomed everyone with open arms when she arrived in Indiana. No diva behavior, no demanding special treatment, no acting like she was bigger than the team. Just a rookie who wanted to make everyone around her better while handling insane pressure with grace. But the friendship revelation wasn't even the most devastating part. Mitchell started sharing locker room stories that painted Clark as genuinely funny and down to earth. Remember when Clark got fined $200 for stepping on the court during a timeout? She tweeted about it like it was no big deal, and Mitchell said the whole team was cracking up about it. The media tried to spin that tweet as Clark being arrogant or disrespectful to the league. Mitchell shut that narrative down immediately by explaining that Clark's sense of humor is what makes her such a great teammate. She wasn't mocking the fine, she was just being herself and keeping things light. Here's what really terrified the WNBA brass though. Mitchell's stories made it impossible to paint Clark as some privileged rookie who didn't respect veteran leadership. Every anecdote showed Clark fitting in perfectly with established players and contributing to team chemistry instead of disrupting it. Mitchell talked about how Clark accepted her role with grace, even though the entire basketball world was watching her every move. She described Clark as someone who wanted to lift everyone up instead of hogging the spotlight for herself. The friendship angle completely destroyed months of careful narrative building. How could other veterans claim Clark was disrespectful or entitled when Mitchell was out here calling her a friend and sharing funny stories about their bond? Mitchell even revealed that Clark's arrival opened doors for everyone on the team. Suddenly, other Fever players were getting recognition and media attention they'd never experienced before. Instead of Clark stealing the spotlight, she was actually expanding it to include her teammates. And then Mitchell dropped this bomb. She said Clark's impact went beyond basketball and changed how people viewed the entire sport. Not just women's basketball in America, but the global perception of what these athletes could accomplish. The WNBA probably had emergency meetings after this interview aired. Their entire strategy depended on veterans staying neutral or slightly critical about Clark's success. Mitchell didn't just refuse to cooperate, she became Clark's biggest endorsement. Now comes the part that probably made WNBA executives lose sleep for weeks. Mitchell didn't just defend Clark, she basically announced the formation of a dynasty that could dominate the league for years. She started talking about the Fab Four core of herself, Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Lexi Hull, like they were the basketball version of the Avengers. Mitchell explained how each piece fit perfectly together, Boston anchoring the post with championship-level defense and rebounding, Hull bringing that scrappy energy and clutch shooting when it mattered most, Clark orchestrating everything while putting up ridiculous numbers, and Mitchell herself providing veteran leadership plus explosive scoring ability. But here's where it gets absolutely insane. Mitchell hinted that she'd be willing to take a pay cut to keep this group together. In today's sports world where everyone chases maximum contracts, that kind of declaration is basically unheard of. She was saying money meant less than building something historic. Think about what that means for the rest of the league. The Fever aren't just some feel-good story about a rookie making an impact. They're building a legitimate dynasty with players who care more about winning together than individual paychecks. The loyalty pledge gets even more powerful when you consider Mitchell's journey. She could have demanded a trade years ago when Indiana was setting records for losing. She could have joined a contender and chased easy championships while the Fever remained in basketball purgatory. Instead, Mitchell stayed loyal through the darkest times, and now she's reaping the benefits of that patience. She gets to be the veteran leader on a team that went from laughingstock to championship contender almost overnight. Mitchell talked about how special it feels to see all those years of struggle finally pay off. She mentioned getting recognition as an MVP finalist and having her best statistical season right when it mattered most. Clark's arrival didn't diminish Mitchell's role, it elevated everyone around her. The dynasty talk wasn't just wishful thinking either. Mitchell pointed out that this core group is still young enough to dominate for years. Clark and Boston are just getting started in their professional careers. Hull is entering her prime years. Mitchell herself is playing some of the best basketball of her career. What makes this even more terrifying for opponents is the team chemistry Mitchell described. She talked about getting feedback from championship-level veterans like Lexi Sidney Colson even when she's on the sideline. The depth and basketball IQ throughout the roster means Indiana can compete even when dealing with injuries. Mitchell painted a picture of a franchise that went from basketball afterthought to must-see television in one season. Sellout crowds, primetime games, international coverage. Everything changed when Clark arrived, and Mitchell made it clear she never wants to go back to those dark days. The WNBA brass had to be watching this interview thinking about how their plan to contain Clark's influence had completely backfired. Instead of keeping her humble, they now had to deal with a veteran leader publicly declaring her intention to build a dynasty around Clark's stardom. The WNBA's nightmare scenario became reality when Mitchell's interview went viral for all the wrong reasons. Instead of containing Clark's influence, they now had their most respected veteran essentially crowning her as the face of women's basketball. The league's careful narrative control strategy didn't just fail, it exploded in their faces spectacularly. Commissioner Engelbert and her team probably spent weeks planning how to manage Clark's rookie season. They wanted controlled enthusiasm, not complete transformation of their sport. They figured veteran voices would help keep expectations reasonable while Clark proved herself gradually. What they got instead was Mitchell declaring Clark changed the entire world, not just basketball, not just the WNBA, the world itself. That kind of endorsement from someone with Mitchell's credibility basically made every other criticism of Clark look petty and jealous. The contrast became impossible to ignore. You had Asia Wilson and Cheryl Swoops throwing subtle shade about earning respect and proving yourself. Then Mitchell shows up and says Clark already transformed everything about basketball while being an amazing teammate and friend. The timing couldn't have been worse for the league's reputation either. This interview happened during playoff season when casual fans were paying attention to the WNBA for the first time in years. Instead of seeing unity and celebration of the sport's growth, they witnessed the divide between bitter veterans and supportive teammates. Mitchell's authenticity made everyone else's criticism seem calculated and fake. She talked about specific moments and personal interactions that showed genuine friendship with Clark. Meanwhile, other veterans were recycling generic talking points about respect and paying dues. The business implications started hitting immediately too. Sponsors and media partners who were investing in the WNBA because of Clark's popularity got confirmation from Mitchell that the hype was completely justified. She basically gave corporate America permission to go all in on Clark marketing without worrying about veteran backlash. Mitchell's declaration that Clark opened doors for everyone also destroyed the narrative about rookies stealing opportunities from established players. She showed how rising tides actually lift all boats when someone truly transforms their sport. But perhaps the most devastating part for WNBA leadership was Mitchell's obvious happiness about the situation. She wasn't grudgingly accepting Clark's success. She was celebrating it and wanting to be part of building something historic. If you're enjoying this content and want to see more breakdowns of WNBA drama and behind the scenes stories, make sure to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more explosive revelations.